Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I will be going through my mid-season predictions. Obviously it isn't mid-season anymore, it's just past, but yeah, basically we're doing it a week late. I'll also show you guys what my predictions were at the start of the year, and basically change them up to mid-season. So I believe, so yeah, I'll get straight into it. My mid-season predictions, 18th spot, I believe will be West Coast. Now, at the start of the season, I had GWS, and that's turning out to be a shocking decision because GWS have actually been a fairly good side this year and have surprised a few teams, that's for sure. But yeah, I've got West Coast in 18th. They've got no sign of improvement. Adam Simpson's job's on the line at the moment. They've been absolutely starved of talent. Their injury list is massive. Their midfield gets battered and bruised every single week. They're coming off a bloody 130-point loss. It can't get worse for West Coast at the moment, really. So, yeah, I reckon they're going to finish 18th, and I don't see them improving. In 17th spot, I have North Melbourne. I still think they'll be pretty competitive, definitely more than than West Coast. I feel like North have had a fairly decent season so far. Obviously, they won their first two games and they haven't won any games since. But they've competed recently under interim coach Brent Ratton. And yeah, they've just got to hope now, North, that they can maybe pull off one or two wins to end off the season. They're still a real building club, and they've got some good young youth shining at the moment in their AFL team. Now, at the start of the season, I did have North Melbourne finishing 17th, so that's looking like it might be a correct call. Now, in 16th, I have Carlton. They are doing horribly at the moment, Carlton. Yeah, absolutely shocking to see them play at the moment. They're missing everything. They're messing everything up. They average, over 10 behinds a game, and they, at the moment, in the last 10 weeks, I think they've averaged like 8 goals a game. It's just getting worse and worse and worse for Carlton. They've got a pretty big injury list as well, and I just don't see them winning many more games this season. And yeah, Vossi's job is also definitely on the line. And at the start of the season, I had Hawthorn finishing in 16th, which could happen. You never know. Now, in 15th spot, I have Hawthorn. I do see them finishing 15th. They are currently in 16th at the moment, but I do see them playing a little bit better than Carlton. In the recent weeks, they've been a little bit more competitive, playing and even beating against some of the better sides in Hawthorn, in Brisbane and St Kilda. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot they can do to improve. They definitely need to work on their consistency and good full four-quarter performances. But Sam Mitchell's still fairly new to the role. I feel like in another 2 more years, we might see Hawthorn rise up the ladder. They've got some great young talent. Their midfield is shining. Mitch Lewis is starring in the forward line. Their defence, definitely gets shaken up without Sicily. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in their next 3 games after their bye without Sicily. And at the start of the season, I predicted West Coast to come 15th, which is a pretty bad decision. Now, in 14th, I have Sydney. Yeah, no sign of improvement for them, really. They've really, really struggled. Every team always seems to do bad after being battered in the previous year's grand final. It's happened to Adelaide, GWS. Didn't happen to the Bulldogs, surprisingly, but it's almost fully said. You can almost fully say it's certain now that Sydney won't be playing finals. So it's happened to them as well. Yeah, they've got some great young players, but it's just injury, I guess, for them. I feel like they'd finish a lot higher if they didn't have as many injuries. Their defence is just getting battered every single week. And it's just really, really, really hard to figure out why Sydney aren't doing as well as last year. I think it's just still the shock of last year as well. They've lost most of their games at the SCG this season as well, so that is very, 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 very surprising. Now, this is where the video gets a bit bad. At the start of the season, I predicted Port Adelaide to come 14th. I know, worst call ever. I don't even want to speak about it. It's that bad. In 13th, I think I'm going to go with GWS. I do see them having a better season than last season and finishing higher. Now, they obviously haven't won that many games this season, but they've been competitive. And they haven't lost by big margins either. Obviously, excluding the Collingwood game, their biggest loss this season, I believe, has been 21 points to Brisbane. And Brisbane were a great team back then, and they were in flying form, so it's a little bit surprising, to be honest, that GWS haven't been blown away by that much. And I think the main reason is due to them having just such a great midfield. Josh Kelly, Stephen Canelio, Tom Green, Harry Perryman, Finn Callahan. They've got so many great players through that midfield. A few young, a few old. But yeah, their midfield's been really, really, really good this season. And obviously Toby Green carrying them every single game. He's not winning them every single game, but I tell you what, you look at GWS's wins, and I'd say almost half of them, or even more, are because of Toby Green. Especially in Geelong, Sydney, last week against North. He's just a ridiculous player, really. And at the start of the season, here's another horrible call. I had Essendon coming 13th. Oh my God, they get worse and worse and worse. Well, nothing's worse than the Port Adelaide one, but getting worse and worse and worse, really. And in 12th, I'm going to put Richmond. It's a bit of a harsh decision because I do think they are improving under Andrew McQualter, and they definitely do look like they could finish top 10, maybe even top 8. But I'm going to put them in 12th just because I feel like they've got a bit of a harder draw compared to some of the teams that are fighting for that top 8 position, the bottom half of the 8 at the moment. And they are at the bottom of all the big lists at the moment that can make finals. And they've got a lot to do. That's for sure, Richmond. But yeah, they're doing well, and you never know. I've just got them in 12th for now. Play it safe. At the start of the season, here's another bad decision. I'd say Kilda coming 12th. They just keep on getting worse. 11th, I've got Fremantle. A little bit surprised. I thought I'd have them a little bit higher, but yeah, they've got a bit of a harder draw as well, Freo. So I guess they had some really hard games at the start of the season as well, and they've got a few difficult games coming up as well, the Dockers. So they've really got to get rolling soon. And yeah, I feel like their form obviously has been really good, apart from that loss to Richmond on the weekend. So yeah, you just never know with Freo. They could definitely make the finals, but yeah, they've got a bit of a harder draw, especially more towards the end of the season, the last 2 months, I want to say. Now, in 11th at the start of the season, I had the Western Bulldogs, which you never know. It could happen, but I just don't see it happening. In 10th, I have Gold Coast. I do think they've definitely improved, especially after their trips to Darwin, the Suns. They've been really good. They've found some great young talent. With Took Miller going out, they needed a good young mid to go in there, and Bailey Humphries really shone in that role. They're getting a few defenders back too this week against Carlton. You got Sean Lehmans, possibly Connor Buderick, Mac Andrew, just superb. The more players they get back, the better the Suns. Their defence at the moment is already looking good, and it could even improve. So yeah, you never know with the Suns. They definitely could make the finals. They've got a big ceiling, the Suns. They could finish all the way up to 6 even. But the problem is they can almost finish, maybe not bottom 4, but bottom 6 possibly. You never know. And at the start of the season, in 10th, I had Adelaide, so that's probably not going to occur either. And in 9th, just missing out in the finals by a percentage, I have the Western Bulldogs. Yeah, it'd be a pretty bad end of season, really, if the Dogs don't make the finals, because if they don't make the finals, Bevo's job's definitely on the line. But yeah, they just couldn't quite get enough wins. They've also got a pretty tricky run home as well, the Doggies. So yeah, the next month, obviously, they've got to be big this week against North. You just bank in the win, but after their bye, they've got a really big month as well. They've got Freo at home, Collingwood at home, Sydney away, and Essendon away, but it doesn't really matter because they'd always play at Marvel. Those are really, really big 4 games. It'll either make or break the Doggy season, and I just don't see them winning maybe even any of those games, which is definitely a big task for the Doggies, and that's probably why they're going to miss out on finals. At ninth, at the start of the season, I had the Gold Coast Suns, which surprisingly is probably my best call so far I've had, but still, I don't know if they'll finish ninth. And in 8th, I have Adelaide, and the reason why they're in the 8th, for me, pretty much, is their percentage after 2 pretty big wins this season over St Kilda and West Coast. They've obviously got a pretty big percentage, and that's easily why they're in the 8th for me. And them too. There's actually quite a few top 8 teams that do have a pretty tricky run home. The Crows have one of the harder run homes. It's not, hard, but it's still pretty hard when you think about it. So, yeah, I guess you never really know with the Crows, and that they definitely could miss the finals. Not saying they're a finals lock, but they've made Adelaide Oval a fortress, and they've got some pretty easy games coming up at the Adelaide Oval against teams like North, GWS, Gold Coast, and then Sydney there to finish off the year. So they're all games they're probably going to go in favourites and expect to win pretty big. So the Crows should be pretty good for finals bound. At the start of the season, I had Fremantle in 8th, which you never know. It could occur, but it's looking pretty unlikely at the minute. Now in 7-5, Geelong. Now, Geelong have been one of those teams this season that have had really, really, really good months and some shocking months. They've definitely probably had the worst. Their worst form was probably the start of the season, though they had a really, really disappointing month pretty recently. And them too have a pretty tricky run home when you think about it. They've got some pretty big games coming up, obviously against Port, Melbourne, and Sydney. And then they've got a few easy weeks, and then you get back into some of the tougher games against Brisbane, Freo down in GMBA. You never know, because Freo beat them last year. They've got Port again, Collingwood, St Kilda, Bulldogs. So Geelong have a really, really, really run home, really, really, really hard run home. And I do think they're a better side than 7th, but that's where they are at the moment, just because of their run, and because they're playing better sides than them away. At the start of the season, this is a really bad decision. I had Sydney in 7th, so yeah, pretty bad. Now in 6th, I have St Kilda. Now at the start of the season, I completely underestimated St Kilda. Ross Lyon's done a fantastic job. Their defence has been sensational. And you'd think from here they are definitely up for finals. I don't have them in my top 4 though. I feel like that'd be pretty generous to the Saints getting into top 4. They've got a big couple of weeks though, and it will make or break their season as well against Richmond and Brisbane. So yeah, you never know. They've also got a pretty tough month to finish the season. So I guess that's pretty much why where St Kilda need to work at. But apart from that, they should really be up there in one of the topper teams. Now in 5th, I've got Essendon. I might be overestimating them at the moment, Essendon, but I almost think they've got the ability to make the top 4, and they might surprise a few in the finals if they get the shot. The problem is they haven't won a final in that long, so they obviously don't have great experience in finals recently either. So it might take a couple of years for them to get deep into finals, and you never really know with Essendon. But I think they'll finish finals. Now I feel like it's almost a lock for them, and yeah, I definitely feel like they're pushing for top 4 in my opinion. The Dons, they're having a really, really, really good season, an underrated one under Brad Scott, but they too have a really, really difficult fixture, especially in the next month. They've got Freo, Port again, Adelaide, Geelong, Bulldogs, Sydney, and then they've got a pretty easy, nice finish to the season. In 5th at the start of the season, I had Carlton, And I had Melbourne in 6, sorry, I forgot to mention before at the start of the season. Them two, horrible decisions. Melbourne could occur, but I don't see them dropping off that bad. And Carlton 5th, that's... Oh, I don't know which one's worse, the Port Adelaide one or the Carlton one. They're both that bad. Now, in 4th, I've got Brisbane. Now, they do have some pretty simple games that they should win up at the Gabba. But yeah, I just don't see them doing so well away from the Gabba. And yeah, got them in 4th, which is actually pretty low compared to some other people. I've seen other people put them up higher, but 4th is where I have Brisbane. They haven't been great in finals either, so this has got to be the season for Brisbane. They've got to get something ticking. They've got the list. They just need to find a way to go all the way. And at the start of the season, I had Collingwood in 4th, which is alright, I guess. Not the worst of the list, that's for sure. And in 3rd, I've got Melbourne. Now, after that big win against Collingwood, I feel like they'll be pretty big and pretty primed for a big second half of the season. I do think Melbourne could go all the way and definitely have the list to do so. It really just depends if their defence is in form, and it is at the moment, and they'll carry that form into the bye, and they'll hope for a pretty big second half of the season. They've got a few big weeks coming up as well after their bye. Important games that they need to win. And at the start of the season, I had Richmond in 3rd, which is turning out to be a pretty bad decision as well. Now, in 2nd, I have Collingwood. Just falling short, I have them of the top spots. I still feel like Collingwood are definitely one of the better teams up there. We've got a really, really good list, and Craig McRae's done a fantastic job, and we do have a few big weeks coming up, but then we've got a few tough games to end off the season as well, so we've got a pretty difficult run home. But yeah, we just got to really, really focus. Definitely one of the harder runs homes. And yeah, at the start of the season, I had Brisbane in 2nd, which isn't the worst either. And first, I'm going to predict the minor premiers will be Port Adelaide, and they've obviously won 10 in a row. Ken's magic is just rubbing off with all the players at the moment. It's just fantastic. Every single player is playing their role, and yeah, they're definitely a finals lock now, and you'd expect them to make top 4 as well, and top 2 even, I want to say. They're just the best team at the moment in the competition, and they're going to be very, very, very hard to beat. So I've gone with a pretty basic top of the table spot there. And I've also, at the start of the season, I had Geelong in 1st, which was another bad call. Now for the medals. Well, firstly, my premiership tip. I feel like the grand final will be between Collingwood and Melbourne. I think Melbourne will get there. I think they'll upset Port in the prelim over at Adelaide Oval, just like they have recently. Port, that they just love blowing their prelims, and I think they will blow a prelim and lose to Melbourne. I think it'll be a Collingwood-Melbourne grand final. I do think Collingwood will beat Brisbane in the grand final at the G and, scrape into the grand final, and I think we'll win. Just like my prediction at the start of the season, I think we've got to win it this year. Yeah, hopefully we can obviously win the flag, and that is my premiership tip. Pretty biased, obviously. Now for the medals, Rising Star. Start of the season, I had Will Ashcroft. I just went basic, and he's definitely up there, that's for sure, but I don't think he's the favourite to win. The favourite is probably Mitch Owens from St Kilda. Bailey Humphrey would be up there from Gold Coast, and Harry Sheezel from North. But my Rising Star prediction, I'm going to go with Harry Sheezel, just because he had an amazing start to the season. He has dropped off a bit, but he's still a very, very, very young player, and he's got heaps of years to develop and really turn into a fantastic player. He's playing a little bit of a different role under Brett Ratton at the moment, so hopefully that doesn't affect him in the second half of the season. But yeah, I'm going pretty basic and going with that for my Rising Star prediction. Now my Brownlow prediction is going to go to Marcus Bontempelli. I would have loved to have tipped Nick Dacos, but I feel like Bontempelli is probably just ahead of your Jordan Dawsons, your Nick Dacoses, your Zachy Butters, your Tim Taranos at the minute. Very, very, very lucky that he didn't get suspended on the weekend. But yeah, I feel like Bontempelli will win it. Pretty basic Brownlow call. I was either going to go with him or Clayton Oliver at the start of the season, and I went with Clayton Oliver. And he's obviously been out recently, but has still been a really good player this season. And you never know if he can get 3 votes in every other game he plays. Maybe this year, you never know, he might win it. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Bont. My Coleman medal. Now this is where I've gone a little bit bold. I haven't really done any bold predictions in my ladder or Brownlow or Rising Star. Obviously, I went very, very bold at the start of the season. However, Marby or Chol, watching it back, it was pretty funny to see my prediction of Marby or Chol. And he can't even barely get a game at the moment at the Suns. I think he might have played 5 or 6 games this season, so it's probably one of the worst calls you can ever make, really. But yeah, AKA really, I went with Tom Lynch at the start of the season, and to be honest, that's even worse at the moment because he's out for the whole season. Really, he broke his foot back in round 3 or 4, so that was an even worse call. So my actual proper realistic call was even worse than my joke call. But yeah, I reckon, and this is a very, very, very bold decision, I reckon Nick Larkey will win the Coleman from North. A little highlight of North's season at the moment, they're going to win 2 big medals. The Rising Star's going to go to Sheasel. The Coleman, I reckon Nick Larkey. Now, he's got to keep his current form up at the moment. Obviously, he started off the season amazingly in the first month, and then he died off. Got a little bit injured against Carlton in that Good Friday game, and he's been pretty bad ever since. But then about a month ago, he's really, really picked up some form again, and now he's just kicking bags and bags every single week. And the way he's going, he will definitely be up there in the top 5, I want to say. And yeah, a little bit of a bold prediction, and I think Nick Larkey will win the Coleman. So thanks for watching my mid-season predictions. Yeah, stay tuned for some upcoming videos coming out soon on the channel, and I hope you guys enjoyed.